Okay, so here I am on a brand new character. I'm just going to try and go through all the settings kind of one tab at a time in an unscripted way to show you how I set up my bars and how I set up my UI just to make things as easy as possible. Um, so initially I'm going to go to character configuration. Everything under system configuration is things like FPS, monitor size, things like that. Um, Character configuration is more like everything inside the game settings. The first thing you're probably going to want to do is change standard type to legacy type movement. Legacy type movement is WASD to move functionally. It means that while as standard type is more tank movement, I normally play on standard type, but that's because I'm a very old World of Warcraft player, and I'm just very used to that. Everything else I'm going to do, I'm going to check off all three of these cutscene skipping things. This means that if I've seen the cutscene before, like if I'm doing dungeons multiple times, it'll automatically skip the cutscenes. The thing I like to do is I like to have first-person view when fully zoomed in. This is a personal preference. I use it for taking photos. There's nothing else. We're going to go to target. Let's see here. Step 1, I changed target type to cone. This makes so that tab targeting is a little bit more intuitive. And I also am going to turn on ground targeting settings, both of these checkboxes here. This means when I've got a ground targeted ability, anything that's like a circle or a line on the ground, it will snap to within my range, so I'll always be able to cast it, and I can double tap the ability button, so I'll double tap 2 or whatever, and it will cast the button instead of having to tap 2 and then click. Let's see. These I'm going to. This you don't need to change right now, but later on when you're going to get to 24-man dungeons, it's very nice to turn these two onto show limited, so that way you are not drowning in 1,000 explosions from every single mage in your party, and you won't be able to see anything. I also have enable clicking on self turned on. It's a personal preference thing. You don't need to click on yourself to target yourself with abilities. You can just target nothing, and then you'll automatically cast abilities on yourself. Item settings. The first thing I do is I uncheck this. This means that when you get new gear, it will go into your regular inventory instead of into your armory chest, which is a separate inventory right here. This means that it's just easier for me, so I know what items I have immediately, and then when I equip them, they'll go into my armory chest for later. So if especially when I'm doing dungeons and I'm getting gear that I'm not going to use, it's in here instead of in my armory chest. I also like to change these both to expanded. This means that I've just got 2 tabs for my inventory instead of 1. I think it's a little easier to tab through. Let's see, UI settings. If you want to, if the green question marks that are popping up all the time is a huge pain in the ass, you can disable all of these checkboxes. I leave them on, but that's because I've got 400 hours in the game, and if there's something that's popping up when I'm that far into the game, then it's probably something I need to pay attention to. I'm going to uncheck these two, and I'm going to check this. This stops the pop-ups that say, do you want to open the play guide when you log in, the achievement recommendations and stuff. This stops achievements from popping up in their corner as well when you log in. Let's see. Display target's remaining HP percentage I'm going to check, otherwise it's just going to be a bar. Now it's a bar that says 95%, 15%. It's a little bit easier for me to read. Let's see. This is all fine. This we don't have to change at all. Hotbar settings. Let's see. Display recost times is fine. I'm going to change this to display only hotbar 1. This means that when I like mount on a mech or something, instead of having a big hotbar pop up in the middle of my screen, it'll just replace my first hotbar down here at the bottom, since I won't be able to cast my normal abilities anyway. Let's see, this is for UI things. There is another one that I'm going to change. It is display recast error messages. which is on log window, and let's see, I turn off the profanity filter. Display recast timer error messages. It's that. And I really hate that because I'm somebody who matches their abilities when they want to cast them to try and get them off as soon as possible. You don't have to do that, you can hold the button down. But this means there's not constant beeping whenever I'm trying to cast spells. So, well, you know, it's for if it's on cooldown. That's really the only things that I think are super, super critical. Now I'm just going to show some stuff that I like. Hide unassigned slots. This just cleans up your bottom bar. I also like to immediately disable the hotbar cycling button. So what that is these two arrows right down here, so you can click them. It'll cycle through your hotbars. I don't think I've ever met anybody who wants to click that on purpose. You can also unclick display hotbar numbers if you don't like them there. I don't like them there. And that just cleans up your UI a good amount. I think those are the most critical things to change. The only other thing that I would recommend is, especially if you're on a smaller character, you can hold the control key and press up on the arrows to move your character farther down. This just means that I can kind of see what's going on a little bit. I don't need half my screen to be taken up by ground. I believe that is about the only thing that I really need. Another couple things, if you go to the emotes list here under social, you're going to want to check this display log message. If it's checked and you do an emote, it'll pop up in the chat screen for everybody in the room, and I think that's a little rude, so you can uncheck that, and you can emote freely without having to worry about spamming people. And the only other thing is, I think some of these menus can be a little small. So if you like to have these a little bigger, a little easier to look at your character, or things like that, you can right-click at the top of any of the bar, click Scale Window, and you can scale that up or down as much as you'd like. I find that really, really useful. Moving on to HUD layout, a lot of this stuff you don't need to change until you're getting into party or group content, but I'm just going to go over it right now, so that way we just know. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Target Bar, and I'm going to click this UI element settings right here. Then I'll click Display Target Info Independently. This means that all my targets things are going to be in separate bars that I can move around. So what I do is I like to take my progress bar, my Target Info progress bar, which is right here, and I like to move that to the center of my screen. This is my target's cast bar, so this is the thing that I'm fighting. This is what it's going to cast. I like to move it to the center of my screen so I know what they're casting, so it's not in a really tiny window up here. And I like to scale it up a good amount to about 140 or 160, so that way I can immediately see what's going on. You don't need to do this, not at all, especially in solo content, but I find it very, very useful. Other things I like to do is my status info enfeeblements. These are my debuffs that are going specifically on me. I like to also move that down and make that a good amount bigger, just so I can see if I'm poisoned or anything like that. It's a little bit easier for me to take a look at. Other than that, everything else you can kind of move around to your own personal preferences. If you're like me and you really like things to be lined up, you can hold Control while you're moving these things, or excuse me, Shift, and they will snap to the grid instead of being able to move freely, and that means you can line things up a lot easier. I think that is about it for like the very, very basic things that I think are really useful. But let me know if you have any questions. I can make more videos or at least answer your questions. That's it.